Hey guys, how's it going? This is the Point After Podcast, and I'm your host, Mark Ewell. Today we have a great show planned for you. We have our NFL recap from this weekend's playoff games. We have the best, hottest takes from Overreaction Monday. We have our segment Coaching Carousel coming back with a new update. We have our 2-minute drill, and then we're going to recap CFP College National Football Championship. So I hope you guys are excited. I'm excited. Let's get into it today. Hey guys, once again I am your host Mark Ewell and this is the Point After Podcast. Today we are coming from you from not our usual studio, but that is totally alright, so if it sounds funky that is why. We're going to start off today with our NFL recap from this weekend's games. We had the San Francisco 49ers beating the Vikings 27-10 out in San Francisco. This was one of the games we picked to be an upset and the Vikings possibly coming out with the win. And man, oh man, did the Vikings not show up. Kirk Cousins, he didn't play great, but I blame it more so on his line. Bosa for the Niners just blew up the Vikings' plans. It was really never even a game. I was really disappointed. I thought it was going to be a great game, and it looked early on like it was going to be a game with Stephon Diggs, 40-something yard touchdown right off the start. It was looking like we were in for a slugfest, and oh man, it fell apart. But it's okay, because the next game made up for that. The next game was the Titans upsetting the Ravens 28-12 in Baltimore. Oh my goodness, we picked this to be an upset too, but even we did not see it going down like this. That much of a thorough handing to the Ravens. It was just, this game, it was kind of like the Niners-Vikings. It wasn't even really ever close. The Titans just looked like the better team out there. And it's crazy. We called it on the podcast, but for the Titans to have done as well as they did against the Ravens, it makes you question the Ravens. They gave their starters 3 weeks off because they didn't start them week 17 against the Steelers. They rested them, and then they had the bye week. So they went just about 3 weeks without playing a game of football. You can't help but think that had something to do with their poor play out there. It was really surprising that John Harbaugh, knowing he had a bye week in week 17, didn't at least start his starters for a little bit longer, just to be able to help him out and give him a chance to acclimate and get back into used to playing. So that way when they had their bye week and had their time off, it would be okay. But yeah, the Ravens came out flat. They did not look ready to play. Similar to New England, they just got bullied around by Tennessee's physical play and running smash mouth playoff style. The Titans really have a chance to go on a run. And that brings us to our next game where the Chiefs beat the Texans 51-31. Ladies and gentlemen, alert, alert, we have a scorigami. A scorigami. I repeat, 51-31 is a scorigami. It is the 1,054th original score in the NFL scoring history. Scorigami is when we get a score that has never happened before, and we had one when the Chiefs beat the Texans 51-31 in Arrowhead. This means the road to the Super Bowl will go through Kansas City for the AFC. The Titans will visit the Chiefs next week for the AFC Championship game. We'll cover that later on the podcast later in the week, though. For now, the Chiefs fell behind to the Texans 24-0 off the start. The Texans blew a 24-point lead. In a game where the Chiefs really didn't look like they ever had it going early on, the Texans let them back into it. The Texans did not want to win that game. to not go for it on the fourth down when the Texans kicked the field goal to go up 24-0 instead of potentially 28-0. You couldn't help but think that that decision would come back and bite them. And on the ensuing kickoff, Kansas City got a great kick return. Then they punched in for a touchdown. Houston then on their own 30 inexplicably goes for a fake punt with 4 yards to go. At that point in the game when Kansas City really didn't have anything rolling still, why are you going to give them an energy boost like that? Why are you going to give them a chance to get back in? I don't know what you're doing as a coach to make that play call there. But if you're going to be aggressive, so be it. They didn't get it. Kansas City punched it right in. On that ensuing kickoff, you need to tell your returner and whoever touches that football, hey, we got to take care of this thing. Because even if we go 3 and out, if we kick it to the other end of the field, they haven't moved the ball that far down the field yet. They've only scored when we've given them a chance. But what do? They fumble it away. I mean, it was a complete backtrack on the early part of the game where we saw the Chiefs making these kinds of mistakes. The Texans made these mistakes, and they kept making them for the rest of the game. That's why the Chiefs put up 51 points and outscored them 51-7 through 3 quarters after letting up 24 points. I'm not calling for Bill O'Brien, the head coach of the Texans, to be fired, but that was some of the most baffling coaching decisions I think I've ever seen in a playoff game in my life. And it was inexplicable. And if I'm the owner or management, I'm asking questions today. I am asking questions about the direction of our franchise. I'm asking questions about, I know the guys in the locker room have it because they made the playoffs. And they proved they could play well because they were up 24-0. I'm asking questions about the people in charge. I'm asking questions about the coaching staff. What are we doing? Oh my gosh. Our last game of the week was the Packers beating the Seahawks in Green Bay 28-23. No short of controversy. There was a fumble early in the game that it appeared the Packers recovered when the Seahawks fumbled the ball away early on. That would have changed the tide of the game early. However, that was ruled, I think, incorrectly, and the Seahawks retained the ball. And then later on, at the end of the game, the Seahawks appeared to stop the Packers on 3rd down, which would have forced a punt, which would have given the Seahawks the ball back with just about a minute left, with a chance to drive down and win the game. However, the refs, I think, again, incorrectly ruled a 1st down. Despite these 2 bad calls, and they honestly even each other out pretty equally, I think. We were picking the Packers on the podcast. You can't go into Lambeau with Aaron Rodgers, the bad man, and expect to win a game. You can't. It's one of the hardest places to play. And that's why we picked the Packers this week, because it does not bode well for teams that go in there. The Packers might not be the strongest team this year. They might be benefit of an easier schedule, but they're still the Packers. It's still Lambeau Field. It's still Aaron Rodgers. And so we're not surprised at all about the result from this past weekend for the Packers and Seahawks. This means that the Packers will visit the San Francisco 49ers next week for the NFC Championship, and again the Titans will visit the Chiefs for the AFC Championship, and then 2 of those 4 teams will head on down to Miami here in about 3 weeks for the Super Bowl 54 in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. We will cover both those games more in depth on Thursday's podcast, but that will do it for our NFL recap. Now for our hottest takes from Overreaction Monday. Our first hot take is Lamar Jackson is the new Kirk Cousins. Okay, so hear us out for a sec. Kirk Cousins was known as the guy who could not win the big game. He could not win the playoff game when his team needed him to make a play. Last year, a lot was brought up about how bad Lamar played against the Chargers in the wild card weekend last year. And he really did not have a great game after he had a pretty solid rookie year. Fans were even calling for Joe Flacco to come back into that game last year. So that was talked about leading up to this game for Lamar. He wasn't worried. He was nice, calm, cool, very professional, which is what I want for my franchise quarterback. However, when it took time to take the field, Lamar didn't play that well. And he padded his stats at the end in garbage time when the game was already out of reach. So if you look at the stat line, it looks fine. But eyeball test, if you were watching the game, you couldn't help but notice the moment seemed too big for Lamar. It just... I mean, I don't want to label someone, Lamar, as the new Kirk Cousins or the guy who can't win the big game, because there's a lot of factors that go into a game, and that's why we come to the defense of Kirk Cousins. And that's why, here on the Point After Podcast, right now, we're going to come to the defense of Lamar Jackson on this claim. The guy who cannot win the big game. It's his second year. Let's pump the brakes. We defended Kirk. We're going to defend Lamar. He put up numbers. They might have been false numbers, but he put up numbers. All right? He's a second-year quarterback. We'll cut him some slack. We'll check in with him in 5-6 years and see what he's done at that point. Then we'll have a greater scheme of how to judge him. But until then, we really can't judge him. Our next Overreaction Monday is Derrick Henry is resetting the NFL landscape. Now, this could be a topic all on its own. And let us know in the comments below if you want us to go more in depth into this on Thursday's podcast. Because I think this is absolutely fascinating. In a league where everyone is taking money away from the running backs and devaluing the position, and giving it to the quarterbacks, the passing attack, the top receivers. In a league where this is going on, the top 4 rushing teams all made the playoffs. The same cannot be said about the top 4 passing teams. The league is being literally and metaphorically run by the running backs. Derrick Henry is resetting the NFL and what we think of the valuable positions. Storm Henry, Derrick Henry, whatever you want to call him. He is absolutely having one of the best string of games in the history of the NFL for a running back. And that's statistics. You can look that up. And if you do the eyeball test, what does it look like? It looks like he's playing with a bunch of college kids. It's not even fair. He's running through people. He is absolutely carrying the Titans. We said it after they beat the Patriots that the Titans will go as far as Derrick Henry will carry them literally. Well, so far, how's that working out for him? Derrick Henry is carrying this team, and as long as Ryan Tannehill and the Titans offense can take care of that football and the defense can hold teams to small scores, Derrick Henry will lead them to a Super Bowl. You heard it here first on the Point After Podcast. If they take care of the football and they go into Arrowhead and they control the ball, they pound the rock, they control the time possession, and the defense can make a few crucial plays on Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense, the Titans will upset the Chiefs. And they have a very good chance, we think, of making it to the Super Bowl. Moving on to coaching carousel, we have an update. The Browns have hired Vikings offensive coordinator Mike Stefanski for their new head coaching position. This is a expected/unexpected decision. They were rumored to want Mike Stefanski last year when they were doing their head coaching search. And so, for them to have gone back to Mike Stefanski this year makes total sense. I think he's a strong coordinator. Will he work out in Cleveland? It'll remain to be seen. The Vikings offense was pretty solid with him. But again, when you take that head coaching role, you need to offense, special teams, defense. You need to do it all. Obviously, you have coordinators, but you are the guy. You're the guy in charge. So how that'll work out for him, we're going to have to wait and see to find out. I think it's a strong hire. I think it's a good hire. but we'll see how it works out. And the interesting thing that this brings up is that this means that Josh McDaniels, the Patriots offensive coordinator, will most likely be staying in New England unless some team inexplicably fires their head coach and hires Josh McDaniels. And this is a huge, huge bargaining chip for New England. Because Brady, wherever Josh McDaniels went, Brady was probably going to follow him. So this probably means Tom Brady will also be staying in New England this coming year. And then Robert Gronkowski, also mentioned that he would evaluate coming back this coming season to play in the NFL. But he also has said before in his career he will only play with Tom Brady. And so Josh McDaniels coming back means Brady might come back. Means Gronk might come back. The Browns could have just saved the Patriots as a franchise. Again, time will remain to be seen on that. And only time will tell about that. But I think this is a very fascinating situation that is going on. And I think it's going to be a very good story going forward. Let's do a 2-minute drill. In the NFL, we had the divisional round this past weekend. The 49ers beat the Vikings 27-10. The Titans upset the Ravens 28-12. The Chiefs beat down the Texans 51-31 in a scoregami matchup, and the Packers beat the Seahawks 28-23. This means that the NFC Championship will be this coming weekend, with the 49ers taking on the Packers in San Francisco, and the Chiefs taking on the Titans in Arrowhead in Kansas City. Moving on to the MLB. The Astros, we finally learned about the penalties that the MLB was going to hit with them with their use of stealing signs during their season. Major League Baseball announced the punishment, including a 1-year suspension for general manager Jeff Luhnow and manager AJ Hinch, loss of draft picks in 2020 and 2021, and a $5 million fine after an MLB investigation found the team using technology to cheat during its World Series winning 2017 season. Luhnow and Hinch were subsequently fired by the Astros owner Jim Crane, and more developments are sure to come. In the NBA for our standings, in the East we have Milwaukee widening their lead a little bit over Boston by 6.5 games, and Miami sitting in third with 7. Out west we've got the Lakers holding true with a 5.5 game lead over Denver, and Utah has tied up Denver with 5.5 game lead. Moving on to the NHL now. The standings have gotten a little bit closer in the Eastern Conference Atlantic Division, with Tampa Bay charging hard on a winning streak. Boston is ahead still with 66 points, Tampa Bay with 58, and Toronto with 54. Florida sneaking in there a little bit with 53 points. In the Eastern Conference Metropolitan Division, we have Washington with 67 points, steadily out ahead of Pittsburgh with 61, and the New York Islanders with 58. Going out west in the Central Division, we have St. Louis with 67 points, Dallas with 56, and Colorado with 55. And in the Pacific Division, this division is super close still. We have Calgary and Arizona tied at first with 55 points, Vancouver and Vegas tied with 54, and Edmonton dropping a little bit but staying right in the mix with 53 points. A lot of action going on tonight in the sports world between NHL and the NBA. Again, NFL this weekend. NCAA football also. The LSU Tigers have beat Clemson in the CFP National Championship for football 42-25. Joe Burrow was 31 for 49 with 463 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an 87 passer rating. And Trevor Lawrence had 18 for 37 with 234 yards, 0 touchdowns, and a 37 passer rating. That was your 2-minute drill. We're going to wrap up today's podcast talking a bit about that CFP championship, where LSU beat Clemson 42-25. Joe Burrow again was 31 for 49 for 463 yards and 5 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had a bit of an off day and, to be honest, did not play that great, going just 18 for 37 for only 234 yards and 0 touchdowns. To me, this was a battle, and to many people, this was a battle of the 2 number 1 picks from this year and next year. And that we mean Burrow this year, first round pick, and Trevor Lawrence next year will be the first overall pick. However, there was an interesting poll done by, I believe it was CBS, about if Burrow and Lawrence were both in the draft this year, who would you draft? And 54% said Joe Burrow, and the rest said Trevor Lawrence. However, we need to weigh some things out. Trevor Lawrence has been doing this dominance for about 2 years now. And he's been an absolute stud for Clemson since he came in last year. However, you got to wonder how much of that is talent carrying him, and will it transfer to the NFL? Because we see a lot of average college quarterbacks that end up being great in the NFL, and a lot of great quarterbacks in college that end up being terrible in the NFL. So college is not really a good representation of how the player will do going forward. And similar with Joe Burrow, he has not been lacking in talented playmakers and defenses around him. So for these two guys to go back and forth in who's going to be the better quarterback, who's going to be the better number one pick, here on the Point After podcast, we're going to make a bold statement. We truly think Trevor Lawrence won't be great in the NFL, and we do think that Burrow will. But here's the kicker. The quarterbacks are products of a scheme, products of a system. Every quarterback is a system quarterback. Whether you like it or not, every quarterback is a system quarterback. If you put a quarterback in a great situation with a good offensive line, some good playmakers, they'll develop and they'll be what they need to be, a franchise quarterback. If you put them in a situation with no offensive line and they're a mobile quarterback, they're still going to be fine. They're a product of the system. They're still fine. It fits their play style. However, if you take a non-mobile quarterback and give them no offensive line, they're not going to function that well. And similar, if you give a mobile quarterback who likes to run around and extend plays, and you make him sit in the pocket with a good offensive line, for an equal reason, it's not going to work. So if Cincinnati ends up taking Burrow, they need to make their offense a system around Burrow. They need to fit the offense to do what Burrow did with LSU this year. They need to get some tall wideouts who can aggressively go up and get the ball and challenge jump balls. They need to get some down the field deep threats. They need to have a good enough offensive line that that Burrow can stay in the pocket and that he can avoid the pressure when he needs to and use his leg when he needs to. But for the most part, he's a pocket passer, and they need to fix that offensive line if they're going to go get Burrow. Last night's CFB championship was not a surprise. We knew LSU was going to beat Clemson. We had a strong suspicion that LSU was the better team. And last night, here on the Point After podcast, we think it confirmed who the better quarterback will be going forward between Burrow and Lawrence. Lawrence has another year to prove himself. Burrow has a year to prove himself in the NFL now. These two and their careers will be tied going forward for years to come. That'll do it for us here on the Point After podcast. Thank you for all joining us, however and wherever you are listening to us this evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Ewell, and thank you for signing me.